The fence leaned like tired bones, weathered gray against the blaze of the California sun. Sam Dawson tightened his grip on the reins, squinting at the land that stretched for miles. 100 acres of brittle grass and ghostly silence for $1. He'd paid the price that morning, but standing here, he wondered if even a single coin had been too much. The air tasted of dust and old secrets, and something about this place made his skin prickle. Behind him, Elias Carter spat into the dirt. "You sure about this, Dawson?" The old man's voice was rough, like it had scraped across too many bad deals and cheap whiskey. "Land like this, it remembers things. Not all of 'em good." Sam glanced over, his jaw tight. "You said the deed's clean." "It is," Carter said, though his gaze slid off to the horizon, toward the empty hills where the sun was already tilting west. "Just don't go digging too deep. Some things are best left where they're buried." He handed Sam a rusty key, its metal worn smooth by time. "House is yours now." Sam nodded, though a flicker of unease crawled up his spine. He wasn't a man who believed in curses. War had taught him that hell was made by men, not spirits. But this land had a stillness that felt heavy, like a church after the last prayer has been said. The ranch spread before him, silent and untended. The adobe walls of the old rancho stood faded, their corners chipped by wind and rain. A broken windmill turned slow circles in the breeze, its creak echoing across the yard like the groan of a restless ghost. Sam tied his horse by the fence and stepped onto the porch. The boards sagged under his boots, each step kicking up motes of dust. He paused at the door. The brass handle was cool against his palm, though the heat of the day should have warmed it. Strange. He turned the key, and the lock gave way with a reluctant click. The door opened to the scent of stale wood and dry earth, as if the house had been holding its breath for years. Inside, the light was dim, filtered through curtains the color of old parchment. A table stood in the center of the room, its surface etched with knife marks and old stains. On the wall, a single photograph hung crooked, a family of 3, their faces faded but proud, standing in front of what must have been this very house when it was alive with color and laughter. Sam stared at the picture a moment longer than he meant to. He knew what it was to lose a home. He set his satchel down on the table, the leather creaking like an old friend. His tools clattered softly inside. Hammers, nails, the things of a man who built more for others than for himself. 5 years of saving every penny from carpentry jobs had brought him here. A chance to build something that would last, something that was his. A floorboard creaked above him. Sam froze. The sound came again, deliberate and careful. Someone was upstairs. He stared at the ceiling, pulse quickening, the stillness of the house suddenly feeling like a trap. Carter had sworn the place was empty. "No one's been in that house for years," the old man had said. So why did it sound like someone was walking just above his head? He moved toward the staircase, each step measured, quiet. The wooden banister felt slick with dust, but there was warmth in the air, as if someone had been here recently. Halfway up the stairs, he stopped, listening. Another creak, then silence. Sam's hand tightened around the handle of his pocket knife. He hadn't needed a weapon since the war, but the habit of caution had never left him. Slowly, he climbed the last steps, the light from below casting his shadow long and thin against the wall. At the landing, he saw the hallway stretched ahead, lined with closed doors. His breath was steady, but his heart thudded like distant drums. The door at the far end stood slightly ajar, a faint trace of movement behind it. Sam pushed it open. The door swung open, its hinges groaning like something waking from a long sleep. A figure stood at the far corner of the room. She didn't scream. She didn't even flinch. The young woman's gaze was steady, her dark eyes locking on Sam as though she had been expecting him all along. Loose strands of sun-darkened hair fell over her shoulders, and the faded blue of her dress bore the wear of many days' work. She looked as much a part of the house as the cracked floorboards and weathered walls. "You must be the new owner," she said. Her voice was calm, steady, but laced with something that wasn't quite fear, more like resignation. Sam blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. "Who are you?" he asked. "Carter told me this place was empty." A faint smile, weary but defiant, tugged at the corner of her lips. "Carter doesn't know everything about this land," she replied. "I'm Belle Alvarez. I've been taking care of this place." Sam's brow furrowed. "Taking care of it? For who?" "For itself," Belle answered simply, "and for the animals that were left behind." Before Sam could respond, she walked past him with quiet, deliberate steps, her bare feet whispering against the wood. "Come downstairs," she said. "It's easier to explain over a pot of coffee. Or do you only drink whiskey like most drifters?" "I'm not a drifter," Sam muttered as he followed her, still unsure if this was a dream or some kind of trick. The kitchen smelled faintly of hay and earth. On the table sat a battered tin coffee pot and a cloth sack of cornmeal. Belle moved with the sure hands of someone who knew every inch of this house. She set a mug in front of Sam and then leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "3 years ago," she began, "this ranch was all but abandoned. A few cows were left wandering the fields, and the chickens were half wild. I started tending them. Milk, eggs, a little garden out back. It was enough to keep me alive. I sell milk to the baker in town for flour and salt. That's how I've managed." Sam glanced out the window, where he could see 2 brown cows standing near the fence, tails flicking lazily. It wasn't the life he'd expected to find here. "So you've just been living here?" "Yes," she said, her chin lifting slightly. "No one else would care for this place. If I'd left, it would have rotted to nothing." Sam studied her hands. They were rough, calloused, the hands of someone who had worked hard and earned every scar. Something in him softened, though his voice remained cautious. "Carter never mentioned you." Belle's eyes darkened. "Carter doesn't mention a lot of things. He was never much for telling the truth when it didn't serve him." Sam leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking. "You're not squatting here for free, are you? I mean, you're not hiding from something?" Belle's lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment she looked away. "This land saved my life," she said finally. "If I leave now, I have nowhere else to go. So I'll ask you plain, let me stay. I'll keep milking the cows, fixing the fences, and tending the well. This house, this ranch, it's the last thing I have left." Her words lingered in the room like a plea and a promise all at once. Sam thought of the photograph upstairs, the faded family who had once stood proudly in front of this house. He thought of his own losses, his wife, his dreams of a home, and how they all ended with empty rooms. He nodded slowly. "All right, you can stay, but I expect to know the truth about this place, sooner or later." Belle's gaze softened, and for the first time he saw a flicker of gratitude. "You'll know," she said, "in time. If you found this helpful, a quick like really helps us." The next morning, Sam woke to the smell of fresh earth and the low murmur of cows outside. For a moment, he thought he was still dreaming. The house had felt so hollow when he arrived, yet now there was life stirring all around it. Soft footsteps on the porch, the creak of a bucket handle, the muted clink of tin cups. He found Belle in the yard, kneeling by the well, filling a pail with water as if she'd done it 1,000 times. "You're up early," Sam said, pulling his jacket tight against the morning chill. "Animals don't wait for men to wake," Belle replied with a faint smile. They don't care who owns this place or how many papers you have. They just need someone to feed them. Sam watched her a moment, the way her hands moved with quiet certainty. You said this ranch used to belong to your family? Belle straightened, her dark hair catching the pale sunlight. She hesitated, then nodded. It was once part of a rancho my grandparents built. Long before fences and deeds, they worked this land with their bare hands. My father, Thomas Alvarez, was born here. He believed every inch of this soil carried a piece of our bloodline. Sam's gaze followed hers across the open fields, where mist clung to the hills like smoke from an old fire. So how did Carter end up with it? Her face hardened. After the gold rush, men like the Maddox brothers came. They had money, influence, and no conscience. They filed forged claims and bribed officials to take whatever they wanted. My father, Thomas Alvarez, was born here. He believed every inch of this soil carried a piece of our bloodline. But instead of celebrating, it brought ruin. Belle's voice wavered slightly, though her eyes remained sharp. The Maddox brothers swore he owed them. They claimed he signed over his rights, but it was all lies. One night, the mine collapsed. People called it an accident. I know better. My father died under that earth, and those brothers walked away with blood on their hands. Sam felt a cold weight settle in his chest. And the deed? I have the original documents, Belle said, lowering her voice as if the wind itself might betray her. The maps my father drew, the proof that the mine is ours. If the Maddox brothers ever find them, they'll destroy them, and me along with them. Why not take them to the law? Sam asked. Belle gave a short, bitter laugh. The law? Out here, the law bows to whoever fills its pockets. I tried once. They called me a liar, said I was nothing but a half-blood girl making trouble. So I ran. I came back here because this ranch is the only piece of him I have left. She turned toward the cows grazing by the fence, her shoulders stiff. I've been hiding here for 3 years. Keeping the animals alive, patching the roof, making sure the Maddox brothers never find me. This place, it's all I know now. Sam studied her face. He could see the fire in her eyes, the kind of stubborn strength that refused to be broken. 3 years, he murmured. That's a long time to be looking over your shoulder. It is, Belle said softly, but I'll keep fighting as long as I must. My father's memory deserves that much. Sam didn't reply. He looked out at the ranch again, the crumbling fences, the broken windmill, the stubborn life Belle had breathed into it. He'd thought he'd bought a simple piece of land, but now it felt like stepping into someone else's unfinished war. By the time the sun crested over the hills, Belle was already in the barn, her sleeves rolled up, the morning light catching the sheen of her hair. Sam stood at the doorway, leaning on the frame, watching her work. She moved with an easy rhythm, as if every motion, lifting the bucket, stroking the cow's flank, pulling the stool into place. "You just gonna stand there?" she asked without looking up. Sam cleared his throat. "I've never milked a cow in my life." Belle chuckled softly. "Then it's time you learned. A man who owns land like this should know how to take care of it." She gestured to the empty stool beside her. "Come on, sit. I won't bite." Sam hesitated, then stepped forward. The barn smelled of hay and earth, warm and grounding. As he sat down, Belle guided his hands to the cow's udder, her fingers brushing his, rough from carpentry, but unsure in this new task. "Don't pull," she said gently. "It's not about force. It's about patience. Pressure, then release. Think of it like working wood. You can't rush it, or it splinters." He followed her instructions, awkward at first, but soon found the rhythm. A thin stream of milk splashed into the bucket, and Belle smiled faintly. "Not bad for a carpenter." Sam smiled too, though the expression felt foreign after years of keeping his face set like stone. "My wife always said I should learn more about living off the land," he murmured, almost to himself. Belle glanced at him. "Your wife?" "She passed, years ago." His voice was quiet, heavy with memory. "She used to dream of a place like this, a home where nothing could touch us." "I guess I bought this land for her as much as for me." Belle said nothing, but her expression softened. For a few moments they worked in silence, the only sounds the gentle pull of milk into tin and the soft breath of the cow. When the bucket was nearly full, Belle leaned back. "There's peace in it, isn't there? Just caring for something that doesn't ask for much. Water, food, a steady hand. Sometimes I think animals understand life better than people do." Sam nodded, his gaze drifting toward the barn's open door, where the sunlight spilled in golden threads. "I think you're right." Belle stood, carrying the bucket with ease. "Come on, let's bring this to the kitchen. We can trade it for flour at the baker's this afternoon. He doesn't ask questions, and I don't give answers." As they walked across the yard, Sam noticed the little things Belle had done. The fence patched with mismatched boards, the garden bed lined with stones, the well cleaned and covered with a sturdy wooden lid. She had poured herself into this place, piece by piece, like a caretaker for the dead. When they reached the porch, Belle set the bucket down and paused, looking at the land beyond the fence. "Señor," she whispered softly in Spanish, "if this land is meant to heal us, let it be so." Sam heard the words but didn't speak. He understood prayers like that, quiet, desperate ones said to the sky when no one else would listen. He felt something stir inside him, a flicker of purpose he hadn't known he was missing. That evening, as dusk settled over the hills, Belle sat on the porch steps, her gaze fixed on the horizon where the last rays of light bled into the earth. Sam joined her, the wooden boards creaking under his weight. He handed her a cup of coffee, its steam curling into the cooling air. "You're quiet tonight," he said. Belle's fingers wrapped around the cup. "This time of day always reminds me of him," she murmured. "My father." Sam waited, knowing better than to push. The silence stretched, filled with the sound of crickets and the far-off lowing of cattle. Finally, Belle spoke, her voice carrying the weight of old wounds. "My father taught me how to read the land. He used to say the earth was like a book, written in lines of stone and veins of gold. 'Pay attention,' he'd tell me, 'and you'll hear its stories.'" Her lips curved into a faint smile as she remembered. "He'd take me out at dawn, show me where the soil darkened with promise, where the creek twisted around hidden ore. He wanted me to understand the land wasn't just dirt, it was life, memory, and hope." Sam listened, watching the way her eyes softened when she spoke of her father. "One winter," Belle continued, "he struck gold. Not just flecks, but real veins deep in the hills. We celebrated like children, thinking the worst years were over. But word travels fast when gold is involved. The Maddox brothers came soon after, pretending to be partners. They brought papers, forged claims, and smiles that didn't reach their eyes." Her voice grew tight. "My father fought them. He refused to sign anything. Then one day, the mine collapsed. They called it an accident, but I saw their men near the shafts that morning. My father never came home." She fell silent, staring at her hands. Sam saw the tremble in her fingers, the barely contained grief. "You were there?" he asked gently. "I heard the earth groan," she whispered. "I ran to the hills and found dust rising like smoke from the tunnels. The air reeked of iron and blood. I dug with my bare hands until they pulled me away." By then, it was too late. Sam's chest tightened. He knew the kind of pain that carved a permanent scar in a person's soul. "After he died, they came for everything else," Belle said. The house, the rancho, the last scraps of his name. They claimed we owed them, but it was all lies. I took what I could, his maps, his deed, and I ran. I've been running ever since. She set the cup down and looked at Sam. I swore I'd keep his memory alive. This ranch is the only piece of him left. If the Maddox brothers find me, they'll destroy it, and me with it. Sam nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking into him like iron. "Belle," he said, "you don't have to fight this alone anymore." For a moment, her expression softened, almost vulnerable. "Why would you help me?" "Because I know what it's like to lose everything," he said simply. "And because this land, it feels like it needs both of us." Belle looked away, but he saw the glimmer of unshed tears in her eyes. The next morning, the sky was bruised with clouds, the kind that promised rain but never delivered. Sam was repairing the back fence when he spotted a faint trail of smoke in the distance, too thin and deliberate to be a wildfire. He wiped the sweat from his brow and frowned. "You expecting anyone?" he asked Belle when she came carrying a basket of eggs. She shook her head, her expression tightening. "No one comes here, not unless they're lost or looking for trouble." Sam glanced back toward the hills. "Could be drifters." "Or worse," Belle said softly. "The Maddox men don't wander, they hunt." An hour later, a lone figure appeared at the edge of the property, leading a donkey laden with supplies. He was a thin man with sharp features, his black hair tied neatly at the back, his clothes simple but clean. Belle's face softened when she saw him. "Lion," she called, relief slipping into her voice. The man smiled faintly and approached, bowing his head in greeting. "Miss Belle," he said with a quiet tone, his accent rolling gently through each syllable. "I brought rice, salt, and dried fish. Thought you might need them." Sam set down his tools and wiped his hands on his trousers. "Friend of yours?" Belle nodded. "Sam, this is Lion Joe. He worked with my father at the mine. After it happened, he stayed loyal. When I have no supplies, he leaves food at the edge of the property." Leon's gaze moved to Sam, sharp but not unfriendly. "You're the new owner." Sam nodded. "Paid $1 for the privilege." Leon chuckled dryly. "Then you paid with more than money. This land has eyes on it. Maddox eyes." Belle stiffened. "They're back?" Leon glanced around, his expression cautious. 2 nights ago, I saw Wade Harper at the saloon in town. He was asking questions. Your name came up, Belle. They know you're somewhere close." Sam felt his stomach tighten. "Who's Harper?" "Their dog," Belle replied, her voice clipped. "Wade Harper is the Maddox brothers' hired gun. He's not just trouble. He's the kind of man who doesn't miss when he draws." Leon nodded. "If he's asking questions, it means they've picked up your trail. You need to be ready." Belle looked at Sam, something like apology flickering in her eyes. "I told you this land would bring you more than peace." Sam crossed his arms, meeting her gaze. "I didn't come here looking for a fight, Belle. But I'm not about to hand this place over to men like that." Leon studied him, as if weighing his resolve. "Harper doesn't care about who owns what. He'll come for the documents, and if you're in the way—" He let the words hang, unfinished. The 3 of them sat in the kitchen as evening fell, a lantern flickering between them. Belle unrolled a small cloth bundle on the table, revealing the deed and the maps her father had drawn. Sam traced the lines with his fingertips, mountain ridges, creek beds, and small notations in careful handwriting. "This isn't just a map," Sam said quietly. "It's a blueprint for something worth killing for." Belle nodded. "That's why I've stayed hidden. But Harper won't stop, and if he's near, the Maddox brothers won't be far behind." Sam leaned back, his jaw tight.
He had come here for a quiet life, but the shadows on this land were deepening, and now they were his shadows too. The West often held certain prejudices against folks like Lee and Joe. But try looking at this story through his eyes. Do you discover a new meaning of loyalty, sacrifice, and what it truly means to belong? The days that followed were heavy with work.
Sam and Belle moved side by side across the property, mending what years of wind and neglect had torn apart. They patched the roof of the barn with salvaged boards, tightened sagging fence lines, and cleared the overgrown path to the well. Sam found himself watching Belle in quiet moments, how she carried herself with both grace and grit. Her hands, though roughened by labor, moved with care as she tied rope, trimmed the garden, or poured fresh water for the animals. There was no idle motion in her, no hesitation, as if the land itself guided her steps. One afternoon, as they were repairing a section of the fence near the edge of the property, Belle wiped sweat from her brow and glanced toward the hills. "You work like a man who's done this before," she said. Sam chuckled softly. "Not this exactly. I built houses, furniture, anything wood, really. Spent most of my life building homes for other folks. Never thought I'd find one for myself." Belle handed him a hammer, her eyes thoughtful. "Maybe you just needed the right place, or the right reason." Sam looked at her, but she'd already turned away, driving a nail into the fence post with firm, sure strikes. That evening, as twilight fell, Belle brewed coffee while Sam sorted through a stack of old books left in the house. Most were brittle and water-stained, but one caught his eye, a large, leather-bound Bible with gilded edges dulled by time. When he opened it, a pressed wildflower slipped from between the pages, landing on the table. Belle froze when she saw it. "That was my mother's," she said softly, almost as if speaking to herself. She took the Bible from his hands with reverence, her fingers tracing the worn cover. Inside, the margins were filled with delicate handwriting, words in both English and Spanish. Prayers for rain, prayers for mercy, prayers for strength when the world is cruel. Belle turns to a page near the back where her mother had written a simple line. "God keeps his eye even on the smallest sparrow. Don't forget, Belle, he watches you too." Sam watched her lips tremble as she read the words. "She died before my father. I was only 12. She believed that the land, the sky, and faith were all tied together. Every morning she'd pray over this place." I guess I forgot what it felt like to believe that someone was listening." Sam cleared his throat, feeling the weight of the moment. "Maybe someone still is," he said quietly. Belle closed the Bible, hugging it to her chest. For a moment, she looked less like a woman hardened by loss and more like the girl she might have been years ago, before tragedy reshaped her. The next morning, they shared coffee on the porch, the golden light washing over the valley. Belle pointed out the old trail that led to the ghost town, its weathered signpost leaning like a drunk man. "That's where Maddox built his empire," she said. "The town was alive once, miners, shops, music in the saloon. Now it's just shadows." Sam glanced toward the hills, then back at Belle. "Shadows don't scare me. Men like Maddox do, and if they're coming, I'll be ready." Belle gave a small, grateful smile. "Then maybe this place has finally found someone who can stand with it." By midday, the wind had shifted, carrying the faint smell of smoke and horse sweat from beyond the hills. Sam was hauling a crate of nails from the barn when he noticed Belle standing still by the fence line, her face pale, her gaze fixed on the distant ridges. "What is it?" Sam asked, setting the crate down. Belle pointed toward the west. "Look." At first, Sam saw nothing but heat rippling off the dry earth. Then he spotted them, 3 dark shapes moving against the horizon. Riders. They weren't traveling fast, but they weren't wandering aimlessly either.
They moved with purpose, weaving through the foothills like wolves closing on prey. "Harper," Belle whispered, her voice tight. Sam's stomach knotted. He'd never met Wade Harper, but the way Belle said the name made him feel like he already knew the man. Cold, precise, relentless. "We need to hide the documents," Belle said, urgency breaking through her calm. She hurried toward the house, skirts brushing against her boots. "If they find the deed and the maps, it's over. We have to be ready." Sam followed, his mind racing. "Ready for what? You think they'll come here?" "They will," Belle said, pulling a loose floorboard near the fireplace. She tucked the rolled papers inside, covering them with an old cloth.
"If Harper's scouting, the Maddox brothers aren't far behind. They won't ask nicely, Sam. They'll take what they want, and they'll kill anyone who gets in their way." Sam stared at her, his jaw tightening. "So what do you want me to do? I bought this land for peace, not a war." Belle turned to face him, her eyes blazing. "Then leave. Go back to your life. But I can't run anymore. This is the only piece of my father I have left. If I die here, at least I'll die fighting for something that matters." Her words hit him harder than he expected. He saw the tremble in her shoulders, the weariness of someone who had carried too much alone for too long. As the riders disappeared into the folds of the hills, Sam walked to the porch, his hands resting on the railing. He thought of his late wife, of the quiet voice that still echoed in his mind. "Do what's right, Sam, even if it costs you." He exhaled slowly, a decision hardening in his chest. "I'm not leaving," he said finally. Belle looked up from where she knelt by the hearth. "What?" "You heard me," Sam said. "This is my land now. I don't care what the Maddox brothers think they own. If they want a fight, they'll get one." Belle stared at him for a moment, as if trying to read the truth in his eyes. Then she gave a small, almost broken smile. "You're either brave, Sam Dawson, or you're a fool." "Maybe both," he said with a shrug. "But I'm not letting them burn this place down, not while I'm still standing." That night, Sam stayed awake on the porch, a rifle across his lap. The stars stretched endless above him, cold and bright. Somewhere in the dark hills, Harper's men were planning their next move. He could feel it in his bones. The storm was coming. If you found yourself drawn into this story, a like and a comment would mean a lot. The afternoon sun hung low, its harsh light painting long shadows across the ranch yard. Sam stood on the porch, the old wood creaking beneath his boots, when the sound reached him, distant hoofbeats, slow and deliberate. He squinted toward the horizon, his hand instinctively tightening on the rifle leaning against the lull. 3 riders emerged from the heat-hazed distance. They didn't rush or wander. They came with purpose, circling like vultures that had already chosen their prey. The lead rider, tall and lean, wore a black hat pulled low, his silhouette sharp against the sky. "Harper?" Belle's voice trembled from inside the house. She stood near the window, her hand gripping the frame, eyes locked on the approaching figures. Sam glanced over his shoulder. "You know him?" She nodded, her face pale but steady. "Wade Harper, Maddox's right hand. If he's here, they're not far behind." The riders slowed as they neared the yard, fanning out to block the main road and the path to the creek. Harper dismounted with a lazy precision, dust puffing around his boots. He took a step forward, the spurs on his heels jingling like a warning. "Afternoon," Harper called, his voice carrying a casual menace. "I reckon you're the new man who thinks this land belongs to him." Sam stepped forward, resting the rifle on his shoulder. "Bought it fair and square. You and your men need something?" Harper's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We need a conversation. There's a girl here, Belle Alvarez. She's got something that don't belong to her."
He tilted his head, glancing toward the windows of the house. "Why don't you call her out, and we'll all have a nice chat?" Sam's jaw tightened. "Nobody's coming out. This is private property. You'd best move along." The two other riders shifted in their saddles, their hands drifting close to their gun belts. Harper, however, took his time, running his fingers along the brim of his hat. "Friend, you don't know who you're talking to. Maddox wants what she stole, and Maddox always gets what he wants. If you step aside, you won't get hurt." Sam planted his feet, voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "I'm not stepping aside. Not today." For a moment, Harper studied him, as if measuring the strength behind the words. Then that cold smile widened. "Well," he said, taking another step forward, "looks like we're going to do this the hard way." Harper tilted his head, his boots crunching on the dry ground as he closed the gap between them. "You look like a man who knows the value of $1, he said, his tone suddenly smooth, almost friendly. "What if I told you that Maddox is willing to pay? 10 times what you paid for this patch of dirt. Hell, 100 times. All you gotta do is hand over the girl and whatever she's hiding." Sam's grip tightened on the rifle, but he didn't lift it, yet. "Not interested." Harper smirked, brushing a fleck of dust from his coat. "Come on, Dawson. You can't tell me you bought this land for love. 100 acres for a single dollar? Carter sold it cheap because he knows it's cursed with trouble. Don't make the mistake of letting some half-breed girl drag you into her mess." Belle, hidden just behind the door, stiffened at Harper's words. Sam saw her shadow move, as if she was ready to storm out, but he lifted a hand slightly, signaling her to stay put. "You're wrong," Sam said evenly. "She's not dragging me into anything. This is my land now, and she's part of it." Harper chuckled, the sound low and mocking. "A hero, huh? Thought I'd seen it all. Let me tell you something, carpenter. Maddox eats heroes for breakfast. You stand in our way, you'll end up just like her old man, buried and forgotten." The other two riders laughed, their hands twitching near their weapons. But Harper raised a hand, and they went still. "I'll give you one last chance," he said, his voice hardening. "Step aside, hand over the deed, and I'll make sure you ride out of here alive. You have no idea what you're protecting. That map of hers, it's worth more gold than you'll see in 10 lifetimes. You could walk away rich." Sam's jaw clenched. "I've walked away from enough. Not this time." The porch boards groaned as he stepped closer, his rifle angled just slightly, not yet pointed, but ready. "I'm not selling out, Belle, or this land. You tell Maddox he'll have to go through me." For a moment, Harper's face was unreadable. Then he grinned, but the smile was cold, predatory. "Through you? That can be arranged." The front door creaked open before Sam could stop her. Belle stepped out onto the porch, her chin lifted high despite the fear shadowing her eyes. In her hands, she carried a small bundle wrapped in oiled cloth. "Enough," she said, her voice steady but sharp. "This isn't your land, Harper. It never was." Harper's gaze slid over to her, his grin widening like a wolf spotting prey. "Well, there's the girl we've been looking for. I was starting to think you'd gone soft, Dawson, hiding her in there." "I'm not hiding," Belle said, stepping beside Sam.
Her fingers trembled slightly as she unwrapped the bundle, revealing the yellow deed and the rolled survey maps. "This is what you want, isn't it? The proof my father left, his claim, his life's work." Harper's eyes gleamed. "That's right. Hand it over nice and easy, and maybe I won't turn this ranch into a bonfire." Sam tightened his grip on the rifle. "She doesn't owe you a damn thing." Harper's smile vanished. He nodded toward one of his men. "Light it up. Start with the barn. Let's see how much fight they've got when their precious cows are screaming." The rider nudged his horse forward, reaching for the flask of kerosene on his saddle. Belle stepped forward instinctively, clutching the deed to her chest. "You won't touch this land," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "My father died for it. I won't let you burn his memory to the ground." Harper raised his hand, signaling his man to stop. "So dramatic," he sneered. "You think Maddox gives a damn about your father? He only cares about the gold buried in those hills. That paper in your hands, it's worth more than your life, or his." He jabbed a finger toward Sam. Sam shifted, standing between Harper and Belle. "You'll get this deed over my dead body." "Don't tempt me, Dawson," Harper growled. His hand drifted toward his revolver, slow and deliberate. "I'm tired of talking. Last chance, hand it over, or I'll see to it you both get buried out here where no one will find you." The silence that followed was like a drawn bowstring, ready to snap. Belle clutched Sam's sleeve, her whisper barely audible. "He'll do it. We need a plan." From the corner of his eye, Sam noticed movement by the tree line. Lian Zhou had been watching, crouched low beside his donkey. With Harper's attention fixed on the porch, Lian slipped into the shadows of the hill trail, silent as smoke. Belle spotted him too and understood. She gave no sign, but a flicker of hope crossed her face. Harper, however, was losing patience. He stepped closer, his boots heavy on the dry ground, the tension in his posture wound tight. "You think I'm bluffing?" he snapped. "Hand me those papers, girl, or I'll burn this place to ash and watch you scream." Belle swallowed hard, her hands tightening around the deed. She whispered so softly that only Sam could hear. "Señor, give us strength." Her eyes glistened, but her voice didn't falter. "This land is all I have left. If you kill me for it, so be it." Sam moved half a step forward, blocking Harper's path. "You'll have to get through me first." The second rider dismounted, his boots hitting the ground with a dull thud. He circled wide toward the barn, glancing back at Harper for permission. Harper gave a small nod. "Tie them up, burn the place if you have to," Harper growled. "I'm done waiting." Sam's pulse quickened. He adjusted his grip on the rifle, fingers steady despite the heat pounding in his ears. He wasn't sure how long they could hold out, certainly not long against 3 armed men. But Lian would find Bennett. He had to believe that. Belle took a deep breath, her lips moving silently in prayer. Sam heard faint words in Spanish. "Padre nuestro, líbranos del mal." "Father, deliver us from evil." Harper's eyes narrowed as he studied Sam. "What's the plan here, Dawson? You really think you can outshoot me and my men? You're outnumbered, outgunned. Hell, you're out of your damn mind." Sam said nothing, his stance unshaken. Harper's grin returned, sharp and humorless. "Fine, we'll do this my way." "Johnny!" The rider near the barn froze, hand hovering over the kerosene flask. "Boss?" "Light it," Harper barked. Before Johnny could move, Belle called out sharply, "Stop! Burn this place and you'll never find what you're looking for. I'll burn these papers myself before I let you have them." She raised the deed slightly, and for the first time, Harper's smile faltered. The thunder of hoofbeats shattered the tense silence. Harper's head snapped toward the ridge, his hand tightening on his revolver. From beyond the hills, 5 riders emerged at full gallop, dust swirling behind them like a storm. At the lead rode a tall, lean man with a gray-streaked beard and a badge gleaming on his vest. Sheriff Bennett. "Harper!" Bennett's voice carried across the yard like a crack of thunder. "Step away from those folks. This ends now." Harper cursed under his breath. "Damn that meddling lawman," he growled, his eyes darting between Sam and the approaching posse. He grabbed Sam by the arm and yanked him forward, pressing the barrel of his revolver hard against Sam's temple. "Hold it right there!" Harper shouted, his voice echoing off the barn walls.
"One wrong move, and this man dies." Sam's jaw clenched, but he stayed still, feeling the cold steel against his skin. Belle gasped, her hand instinctively reaching toward him, but she stopped short, fear etched across her face. Sheriff Bennett slowed his horse, his deputies fanning out behind him. Their rifles gleamed in the late sun. "You don't want to do this, Harper," Bennett called. "You're already wanted for robbery and murder in 3 counties. Add one more to the list, and you'll hang for sure." Harper laughed, but it was a bitter, strange sound. "I'm not leaving without those papers. Maddox will pay double what this land's worth. Hand them over, Belle, or I'll put a bullet in your friend's skull." Belle's fingers tightened around the deed. She looked at Sam, his eyes steady, his face calm despite the danger. In that moment, something passed between them, unspoken but resolute. "Harper," Sam said evenly, "you think killing me will scare her? You don't know Belle Alvarez." Bennett inched closer, his hand hovering near his holster. "Let the man go, Harper. There's no way out of this. You know it, and I know it." One of Harper's men shifted nervously in his saddle. "Boss, maybe we—" "Shut up!" Harper snapped. His grip on Sam tightened, and the hammer of his revolver clicked back with a sharp, deadly sound. "No more talking. Belle, I want those papers now, or I swear I'll—" The air seemed to hold its breath. Sam felt the barrel press harder against his temple, Harper's ragged breath brushing his ear. Belle stood frozen, the deed clutched tightly to her chest. Then, like a lightning strike, everything happened at once. "Belle, now!" Sam shouted, twisting sharply out of Harper's grip. He dropped low, driving his shoulder into Harper's chest. The revolver fired, a deafening crack that splintered the porch post inches from Belle's face. Sheriff Bennett's voice thundered, "Take them down!" Gunfire erupted. The 2 deputies on the left fired first, their shots ringing out in perfect rhythm. Johnny, Harper's man near the barn, yelped and fell backward, his hat spinning into the dirt. The second rider kicked his horse hard and bolted for the open plains, bullets snapping at his heels. Harper staggered back from Sam, fury blazing in his eyes. He raised his gun again, but Sam was faster this time. With a sharp crack of wood, Sam swung the rifle stock into Harper's arm, knocking the weapon loose. The revolver clattered onto the porch. "You're finished," Sam growled, chest heaving. Harper snarled and lunged, drawing a hidden knife from his boot. But before he could strike, a single gunshot echoed through the yard. Harper's body jerked, then crumpled to the ground, his knife slipping from his fingers. Bennett lowered his smoking revolver. "Is he?" Belle whispered. Bennett dismounted, walking over to check. "Dead," he confirmed grimly. "It's justice long overdue. Thomas Alvarez deserved better than this." Belle's knees wobbled, and Sam caught her before she fell. She clung to him, the deed still in her hand, tears sliding down her dirt-streaked cheeks. The deputies gathered up Johnny, who groaned as they tied his hands. The runaway rider was long gone, but Bennett didn't seem concerned. "He won't get far," the sheriff muttered. "Maddox will hear about this soon enough, and we'll have enough to bring them down." Bennett turned to Belle, his voice softening. "Miss Alvarez, your father's claim is safe now. These papers and my testimony will see to that. The Maddox brothers can't bury the truth any longer." Belle nodded, her voice breaking. "I've waited 3 years for someone to believe me." Sam glanced at her, pride swelling in his chest. She had faced fear and death and still stood strong.
As the deputies loaded Harper's body onto a wagon, Sam placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's over," he said quietly. "You're free now. Your thoughts truly matter. Don't hesitate to give this story a rating." The ranch was quiet again, save for the distant clatter of hooves as Sheriff Bennett and his men rode away, taking Harper's body and the captured outlaw with them. The echo of the gunfight still hung heavy in the air, mingling with the acrid scent of spent gunpowder. Sam stood on the porch, watching the dust settle in the orange glow of the setting sun. Belle sat on the steps, her hands still trembling as she held the bundle of papers, her father's deed and maps. For years, those documents had been her only weapon, her shield against the Maddox brothers' greed. Now, for the first time, she allowed herself to let go. "Sheriff," Belle had said earlier, handing the papers to Bennett, "I trust you with this."
My father's claim. It's all we have left of him. Make sure Maddox never gets his hands on it again." Bennett had nodded solemnly. "You have my word, Miss Alvarez. These maps and my testimony will see to it that justice is done. Maddox's day is coming." Sam had watched the exchange quietly, a deep respect blooming in him for Belle's courage. Now, as twilight descended, Sam lowered himself onto the steps beside her. They sat without speaking for a while, watching the horizon where the hills turned purple and gold. "You all right?" he asked softly. Belle let out a long breath. "I don't know," she admitted. "For so long I've been running, hiding. This fight was all I knew. Now that it's over, I almost don't know what to feel." Sam studied her profile, the way the fading sunlight caught the curve of her cheek, the faint streaks of dirt and sweat that made her look both weary and strong. "Maybe it's time to feel something else," he said gently. Belle gave a small, tired smile. "This land has taken everything from me, Sam. My father, my home, even my peace." She paused, glancing at him. "But maybe it's giving something back now." Sam looked out at the open field, the fences they had mended together, the barn that still stood despite the day's violence. He thought of his late wife, of the years he'd spent drifting like a man without an anchor. He placed his hands on his knees, leaning forward slightly. "Maybe it's giving us both a second chance," he murmured. Belle tilted her head, her dark eyes meeting his. "You really mean that?" "I do," Sam replied. "I came here looking for a place to belong. Didn't think I'd find more than an empty house and a few acres of grass. But I found you, and this land. Feels like it's worth fighting for." Belle looked down at her hands, still rough from years of work, and clasped them together. "You're a stubborn man, Sam Dawson." "Guess I'd have to be," he said with a faint grin. "It's the only way anything gets built that's worth keeping." The last light of the sun dipped behind the hills, and the valley grew quiet again. In that silence, there was no longer fear, only the sound of the wind brushing through the dry grass, like a soft sigh of relief. "Tomorrow," Sam said after a pause, "we start fixing this place up. Not just to keep it standing, but to make it a home again." Belle's gaze softened. "I'd like that." They sat a little longer on the steps, watching as the first stars began to emerge above the California sky. For the first time in years, Belle felt safe enough to breathe deeply, to believe that tomorrow could bring something better than the past. Night had fallen softly over the ranch, the sky painted with a blanket of stars. The lantern on the porch flickered, casting warm light across the wooden boards where Sam and Belle still sat. The day had left them both drained, but neither felt ready to step inside. Belle shifted slightly, her hand reaching into the pocket of her dress. When she turned to Sam, she was holding a simple silver ring, its surface worn smooth with age, but still glinting under the lantern's glow. "This was my father's," she said quietly. He wore it every day, even when he went down into the mine for the last time. When they pulled me away from the cave-in, this was the only thing they found that belonged to him." Sam looked at the ring, then at Belle. He could see how much it meant to her, the way her thumb brushed over it like it was a piece of her father's hand. "I want you to have it," she said, holding it out. Sam's brows knit together. "Belle, I can't." "Yes, you can," she interrupted softly but firmly. "You stood with me when you could have walked away. You gave me something I thought I'd lost, someone I can trust." He hesitated, then slowly took the ring. It was cool against his palm, heavier than he expected, as if it carried all the weight of the Alvarez family's history. "I'll take care of it," Sam said. "Same way I'll take care of this place, and you." Belle's lips curved into a small smile, but her eyes shone. "Then we're partners, Sam Dawson, not just for survival, for something better than that." The next morning would bring repairs, mending the broken fence, replacing shattered boards, scrubbing away the bloodstains of the day's violence. But tonight, the future felt wide and clear. Sam glanced at the barn, still standing despite the fight, and imagined it full of life again. Cattle in the pasture, chickens scratching in the dirt, and maybe even laughter spilling out of the kitchen window. He had saved his money for years, but all the while he hadn't realized what he truly wanted wasn't just land. It was this, building something that would last, with someone who understood what it meant to fight for it. "We'll start with the barn," Sam said, breaking the quiet. "Patch the roof before the next rain, and maybe plant something by spring, alfalfa or wheat, something that can take root." Belle nodded. "And I'll keep milking the cows, bring fresh milk to town. Folks will see this place alive again. They'll see it's not just a piece of forgotten land." Sam turned to her, smiling faintly. "No, it's more than that. It's home now." The lantern sputtered, its flame dipping as the breeze passed through. Belle stood, stretching her tired limbs. "Come on," she said, glancing toward the house. "Tomorrow will be a long day. We should rest." Sam rose to his feet, still holding her father's ring. He slipped it onto his finger, feeling its snug fit like a silent vow. As they walked back into the house together, the first light of the moon spilled across the ranch yard, silvering the fences and the roof. Behind them, the wide California sky sparkled with stars, as if the land itself was blessing this new beginning. For the first time in many years, both Sam and Belle felt that they weren't alone anymore. What had started with a $1 ranch had turned into something priceless: hope, trust, and a future waiting to be built. Step into true Wild West stories where the untamed frontier comes alive with tales of courage, loss, and hope. Each story is a journey into nostalgia and humanity, touching the heart with timeless values and quiet resilience. Subscribe now and let these stories stay with you long after they end.